it's about the same size, and we have a similar master's and the doctoral program in distance education. And well, I guess there's big differences though too, because it is so damn cold in Canada all the time, it seems like, that it's a really relief. This year we had snow that lasted from November 1st until 2 weeks ago. It finally went away, so it's very nice to come to Barcelona. But it's really important for me to get a chance to talk to people like yourselves who are tutoring in our master's degree, because to me that's the most important part of the teaching learning system, is the people who are actually engaged with the students. In our program, we have about 350 students in the master's degree. We have 8 full-time faculty, but we have 30 people like yourselves who are, working frontline with students. And our challenge is to both help our adjunct professors to utilize the new technologies, to be very brave themselves, and to find the time and the energy to try to enhance their teaching presence online. So this morning what I wanted to do was to talk to you about some of the new tools, a little bit about the theory, but mostly about the new tools that we're starting to use. I wish we could say that we're using all of these tools the best we possibly could, but we're learning, and so I hope that to be able to share some of those insights with yourselves. And I do apologize that I can't talk to you in Catalonian. It would be much better for all of us, I'm sure. Okay, just a little map. There is Athabasca University. It's located in the town called Athabasca, and Athabasca has only 4,000 students in it, or 4,000 people in the whole town, and it's way in the middle of the bush. I live in the city of Edmonton, which is about 1 million people, but you have to drive 160 kilometers into the forest before you come to Athabasca, and so it's kind of a funny place. It's like the Open University here. We have no classrooms, no face-to-face students at all, and we used to be 100% asynchronous. We're starting to use more synchronous activity now, even though we have big time zone problems like you do when you teach to South America, but we're trying to get the right mix. And you can see the size of the university is about the same as your university. The one big difference, though, is that we were founded about 25 years earlier on the model of the British Open University, which was correspondence and print-based. And it has been very hard for us to get into an e-learning environment. You guys were born as an e-learning university. I think it's much better way to start a university, but so it goes. Okay, this is a diagram you may have seen if you've read much of the literature. It became quite famous. Well, it continues to be referenced and cited a lot. And it talks about online learning as having 3 big presences, if you like. Social presence, which is the capacity for students to interact as they really feel, and to be honest, to be open, to be able to share humor, and not just to have an online experience that reflects who they really are, and not just how they think they should be online. And then teaching presence, which we're going to talk mostly about today. Where we allow a teacher, again, to have that same personal involvement, but they allow them to be able to share, to teach in some of the, to add their content and their expertise, their subject matter expertise. And together, those should support cognitive presence, which is the difference between when you go to a Barca game or in a bar. The cognitive presence is, well, it's there, but it's a different level than what we expect in academia. And so the social presence and the teaching presence go together to support cognitive presence, as you see in this diagram here. And what we did when we were developing this model, my colleague and my ex-PhD supervisor, Randy Garrison, and I developed this model about 10 years ago. And what we did was we tried to find different ways that you could measure each one of those: cognitive presence, social presence. And we were looking in the transcripts from the computer conferences, because it was all asynchronous dialogue. And so we broke out different indicators, and then we could count the indicators so that we could see which courses had no social presence, which had too much teaching presence, which ones had the most cognitive presence. And people are continuing to do that work today. I don't do it myself. It's become too hard work to try to find all these indicators in the transcripts, but it's great for other people to do. So social presence, the ability of participants to identify with the community, to become engaged, to be integrated in the community, to be trusted and feel like they're not under attack and that it's a comfortable way for them to learn. And it's also indicated with transactional presence, which was a newer idea from 2002, where the degree to which a distance student perceives the availability and the connectedness with teachers, peer students, and institution. And what we're doing in our master's degree, and I'm sure you are too, is what they call constructivist learning, where we're using the group process. We're using people's trust and sense of comfort within an online group. And that's different than a correspondence model of learning, which is only you by yourself. And some of the most powerful learning comes when we can allow students to become engaged in a community and in a community of inquiry. So, and the other thing is social presence is different in different disciplines. What a mathematician and a physicist and an English teacher, when their level of social presence, I think, varies across the discipline. And how you feel comfortable as a teacher will vary too in your interpretation of social presence. So, getting now to the next, what is teaching presence? And we've said that there's three big parts of it. It's designing learning activities, facilitating them, in the direction of cognitive and social presences, and so sort of being able to draw out students and finally, of course, to be able to add your own cognitive presence. And we took a lot of this stuff from the Moore and Holmberg, some of the famous people who have written before us in distance education. And so when we tried to say, well, okay, how can you actually see teaching presence? And what we thought was there's three areas that we were looking for. And so we went through the transcripts and we coded every time we saw an instance of them. And we saw there were three big activities. There were, first of all, to design the activities, to think about things that are meaningful for students to do, and to how did the teacher go about organizing. Because students, when they first come online, a lot of them are not that familiar with studying. They're familiar with classroom education, but they don't really know what to expect from us as teachers. So especially at the beginning, I think we have to be organizers and we have to act like we know what we're doing and help them to feel comfortable in that kind of environment. And then we have to facilitate. We have to be able to draw students out. We have to be able to ask students to do certain tasks. And we often have to learn how to break them out into separate groups so that they get more time to talk to each other. And to facilitate. And finally, we looked at times where they were adding the subject matter expertise that you all have, and how is that being shown in the computer conferencing. And what we did find when we looked at many courses that the transcripts is probably the biggest reason why courses failed or that the students didn't have a good learning experience was not because there wasn't good content or the textbook was poor. And it wasn't because the students were poor or ill-prepared. It was mostly because the teachers didn't know how to facilitate and how to add their teaching presence into the course. So what you'll find is, at least that we spend quite a bit of time designing our courses, and they're often done by our full-time faculty. But what we're trying to get our adjuncts or our tutors to do is to be more proactive in adding content and making it so it's customized for the students who they have or the individual students. And so what's really neat is the proliferation of resources that you can see on the net now that can easily be added into courses. Now, I guess sometimes we have a problem is deciding, does an adjunct teacher, like most of you, are they allowed to add new video, new articles, new content? Or how does that work in the assessment? And there's a big tension, and it comes from our open university background, where when the open universities were first established in the United Kingdom, the professors who designed the course, they tried to make them teacher-proof, so that a teacher could not screw them up and could not muck and mess with them. And I think that really set us back a long ways, because then that said that the individual teachers can't add and can't own their courses too. And so what I try to do is I give a broad course outline with selected readings, but then I let the individual teachers decide how they want to add to them and how they want to change and add to the discussions. And of course, if there's more than one teacher in a subject, they can work together too and help to develop a community. And I know you do that when you meet at meetings like this. So I just would encourage you to get out on the net and to go to YouTube, punch in education technology or learning design or whatever it is you're teaching. I'm quite always amazed. I teach mostly research methods courses, and every year I get the students to contribute 2 or more resources to our community. And some of the stuff they come up with is really amazing. And I think, well, why didn't I find that when I was writing this course? But then maybe they weren't there, or it's a constantly changing world. So YouTube is a good one. And then the open educational resources. I don't know how many of them are available in Catalan or in Spanish, but certainly in English. You can go to places like OER Commons, which searches about 8 or 9 different repositories of open educational resources, and there's a whole bunch of stuff available. You've probably heard, and maybe your president or your directors are getting frightened now about MOOCs coming into the world. They're very disruptive because they're free, and when we have systems like ours that are built on tuition, when you have things given for free, it's a bit scary. But the way I'm starting to think of MOOCs, and the best way that we can use them, is to think of them like a textbook or another educational resource. And like when we teach research courses, some of our students have very weak backgrounds in statistics. And now we can send them to the MOOC done by the University of Toronto, and it's a very good course. And then I don't have to waste the class's time with people who really need that kind of remedial work. And I've been enrolling in some MOOCs myself, because I find that the fact that they're open, we can see how another teacher teaches, and we don't get too many chances to do that. So regardless of whether it's threatening to our institution or not, I think it's very good for us as individual teachers anyways, and we can learn a lot from them. The fourth one is, as I said, student-submitted resources, is that like we teach in a Moodle environment as our learning management system, but I don't like Moodle because at the end of the course, everything is over and gone, and all of the things that the students have done they have to start all over, and that's not the way we build knowledge in our discipline. We stand on the shoulders of other people. And so what I do now is I run another environment, a social learning environment, much like Facebook in many ways. And it lasts forever, and the students can come back even after they've finished the course. They can add new resources, they can follow the discussions, and it's sort of a live community that just goes on year after year after year. And to me, it means more control for the students, but it also means more input from them. And so, as I said, I force them to contribute at least 2 things to the community, and to comment on the things that other people contribute. And you can do that, as I said, with past assignments. Of course, wikis are really good for that, of getting student to sort of build a portal, if you like, where it's sort of like Wikipedia itself, is that this year students, they build this much of it, and next year students keep building and building and building until the resource or the reference keeps improving. And there's a new program called Learnist out now, and it's developed for anybody to teach anything to anybody. So if you're interested in football or fishing or meteorology or whatever, and it's really easy to build little mini sites, and it's free. And what it does is if, say I'm doing one on car racing or something like that, I just go to a site and I push the Learn This button, and it says, okay, I can take the picture of this site, I can take the URL, do you want me to take 4 other pictures, or what do you want me to take? And all the cut and pasting that you normally have to do gets all taken care of by this program. So it's really easy and quite powerful. This is the OE, just a screenshot from the OER Commons, because sometimes we don't know where to find, and we spend too long finding these open educational resources to begin with. So this one I like because it sort of allows you to break them down by subject areas. And here I punched in the word instructional design, and it came with 142 different resources for instructional design. Any of which, and they're rated. This was a 5-star, people, and again, we have to contribute to these resources, not just be consumers. So every time you use an open educational resource, somebody has given that to you as a present, and I think it's a moral obligation we have to at least say that you liked it or didn't like it, or just to add back to the community. Oh, this is the shot of the Learnist, actually. And you can see this one is about, videos for Sandbox Summit. I don't even know what it's about. But people can follow it, you can like it, and if you're following one of these Learnist sites, then when the person adds new things to it, it sends you a little email saying there's something new in the Learnist thing that you're talking about. I guess this is about education, this one here. So all of this, I think what we're doing is we're in the middle of a sort of an evolution. We started in distance education with a real cognitive behaviorist pedagogy, which was the correspondence model, where we made learning objectives, we made everything clean and clear, but we didn't have much interaction. It wasn't technically possible. Then we moved into constructivist education, where most of us are right now. And what we're just starting to see is a move into connectivism, where instead of having us just, sort of consume or sort of even internally construct knowledge, we're trying to develop ways to connect on networks to other people and to other resources. And so there's quite a bit of, if you punch in connectivism these days, it's very hot, and it's the basis of a lot of the so-called CMOOCs that are around. But as I see it, there's 3 things that differentiate connectivism from constructivism, where most of our courses were designed. And the first one is persistence, and that is that the things do not go away. And so the contributions, the things you do this year, they last. Accessibility, so that everything is online in a connectivist world. Otherwise, it's not connected to other people and for other people. And not just connectivist or accessibility for us, but if it's done well, it works for people who have visual handicaps, and it works on mobile so that we can do it while we're on the train or whatever. So maximum accessibility. And then finally, the mystery of network effects, where every time we contribute something onto the net and we build our net presence, we start building social capital so that we can use our connections to other people, to other ideas, and we can start, becoming more effective academics, more effective teachers by the use of the networks that we build. And you build those networks, and I'll end with talking about net presence, but we do it on things like Facebook, but we also need to build our scholarly presence and our network of academics. So the second thing, besides content and designing courses, is how do we facilitate discourse? How do we get groups to work effectively? And I wrote the first one, the right size of the subgroup. And from what I learned about your program last year, is that some of the courses have as many as 50 students in them. I think you're world leaders in scalability, because usually people say, oh, you can't teach more than 25 or 30 students in an online course. And you guys are proving that you can teach more than that. But I think what you probably have to do is break down into subgroups and trying to find out what is the right size of subgroup to make learning effective. I don't think we're really very clear on that right now, any of us. But I think also how to allow those subgroups to distill different ideas and then bring them back and share them within the group. I think there's a whole research topic in helping the rest of us in the world move from that 25 student maximum up to 50, 70, or 100 students. Because distance education, I think, should be cheaper and more cost effective. And so we have to learn all the time how to do that. The right kind of questions, I think it's a challenge and a skill to learn how to ask a question that's open enough so that the first person who answers it doesn't sort of, oh, well, there's nothing for me to say, that person already answered it. And you have to build a question that, the way I often do it is to say, here's the question, now answer the question with an example from your work or your learning or your life. And so that they're building, and then nobody has the same life as anybody else, so there's always some variation and some reason for them to sort of personalize and build their own student presence into it. The right number of questions. I was just reading a study last week, and they said that you should only ask one question at a time, because otherwise students, they say, oh, you answer one, then I'll answer this one, you answer that one. And you can't build a cohesive group. But change the questions so they don't sit there for 2 weeks, but rather having them go sequentially rather than a whole bunch of them. The right quantity of interventions, knowing when should the teacher intervene and when can we be quiet. And when we were studying, it was amazing. Some teachers they must have been online all day and all night, because every time a student answered, they were popping in with the answer. I think that's a wrong thing to do, because it makes everyone dependent upon you, the teacher, rather than giving enough time. But students also don't like it if they don't feel you're there, if you're not there. So knowing, it's, I don't know, in Catalan, if you have a story about the three bears and the porridge was too hot or too cold or just right. And I think that's the way it is with interventions. You can fail on both sides of that, and trying to figure out your own level of comfort in being someplace in the middle. I think with these small groups too, we have to give up the teaching presence and allow teachers, especially in graduate programs, allow the students to be those facilitators and the leaders in these small groups. And I did a study with Liam Rourke a few years ago, and we have 13-week courses, and for the first 3 weeks, this was a smaller class, there was about 18 students in it, and for the first 3 weeks, I facilitated the discussion groups, and I thought they went all right, but then I gave each of the students, they had to facilitate the next few courses, and they were given the topic, and then we coded all the transcripts from them in terms of teaching presence, cognitive presence, and social presence. And it was quite embarrassing to me, because the teaching presence was higher from the students than it was than the ones that I had facilitated. And I thought, oh, I thought I was a good teacher. But I think the reason was because the students, they only had 1 week to do it, and they really did a good job of it, whereas I had to do, every week. And so I sort of ran out of energy a little bit. So I think it's really nice to have them as leaders. And then video and audio enhancements, even not in real time. And the next slide will show you how VoiceThread works. But the use of synchronous sessions. And I think synchronous sessions with recordings, and that's the big difference that allows us to use them in asynchronous environments. So we use a program called Adobe Connect, and although we have students who get up in the middle of the night from Asia and from Europe, I still think it's worth it, especially at the beginning, so that everyone knows the course is starting now, and they get a chance to talk about the assignments and things that are very important to them. And then at the end, it's really hard to have a class party asynchronously. I think parties should be synchronous. So if you have an end of course celebration. And this is a program here. I think I can actually go to it. Let's see what happens here. Yeah. This is a program called VoiceThread, and it's open now to different voice threads that I've done. And this is one I use now quite a bit. And what it does is it allows you to have text, and then the students can talk, and I'll just, I built this in PowerPoint and then just uploaded it. And so every page is a new page.
And I'm a Canada Research Chair at Athabasca University.
If you can hear that.
I teach a course in our educational doctoral program, which is taught entirely at a distance. And the topic of the course is educational research.
So that's me introducing the course. And then here's all the people, where the students.
Well, guys, Terry and Terry, I'd like to congratulate you for the paper that you gave us to read. The paper.
Anyways, or you can go over, this one is nice too.
I have to be honest in saying that I had to read the title of this article several times just to wrap my head around the ideas that it's addressing. To me, a good title will welcome the reader in and provide a foothold for those entering the paper. Personally, I would have preferred a more succinct and inviting title. A title.
So you see how she's learning to be critical at the same time, and she's sharing it. And this student, like these are students from 3 different years. They're not all in the same class. They don't know each other. And the students get the choice. They can have just audio, the video, or text, whichever they want. And they can record it over and over till they get it right, and it's free. So I think it's a really powerful tool to add social presence for the students and for myself. And even though I picked an article that had a bad title. Epistemological awareness, instantiation of methods, and uninformed methodological ambiguity in qualitative research. I think she was right. The author had a lot to work on that one. So that's one of my favorite tools. Okay, but now another part of teaching presence is to be an expert. And you've all had at least a master's, many of you have got doctoral degrees, but you probably, if you're as old as I am, that happened a long time ago. And so how do we know we still have, subject matter expertise? And that's why I think it's really important that we personally keep our academic credentials and our knowledge, especially in the field that we work in, because it's changing so rapidly. And not just the technology. Yeah, I think the assessment methods and the pedagogy is changing as well. So, of course, you should be subscribed to eRotal and to Ruska here at the Open University of Catalunya. But you can see, I'm just going to open this in a minute. Here we are. This is, for those of you who don't know, eRotal. And this is the latest issue, but it's totally free. And you can see that there are 5,599. So one of you can be the 5,600 subscriber if you punch in right today. And you can also, for every article, notice how they're done in HTML, PDF, MP3, so that if you're commuting on the train or in the car, instead of listening to nice Catalonian music, you can listen to research articles all the way, or in EPUB to read on your mobile device. And the other thing, which I haven't checked, is for each, you can, let's see, do we have it in? Yeah, you can read them in Catalan if you want as well. But you'll have to tell me whether the translation is very good. In fact, I should have, yeah? Unfortunately, the MP3 is in English only, but that's good practice for you anyway. And you will especially want to subscribe, because next issue, there is a hot new article coming out. Do the Open University of Catalonia students fit the next generation profile? By Marc Romero Montes, Albert, and Mark Bullen. So don't miss it. Coming right up. And you'll also see, well, it's a bit of a brag here, but this little cluster map, we can go on it. And you can see that eRotal is the most widely read in the world, and it's mostly because the price is right. It's free. And so if any of you are actively publishing, you know, sometimes I do become a real preacher about openness, and I get everyone to swear that they will never submit to a closed journal ever again. And we all I don't know. In North America, we have these TV evangelists who try to have you born again, and you put your hands on the television and you swear that you're going to be a good person. Well, this is what I do sometimes, is get people to swear that they're not going to contribute to closed proprietary journals anymore. They're going to only send them to ROSC or eRotal. And in our discipline, 3 years ago, we did a study of the 13 of the most famous distance education journals. And by coincidence, half of them were closed and half of them were open. And we tried to show that the open ones were getting cited more often. But unfortunately, there was no significant difference. But there was a trend, and I think if we were to do that now, I think you would see that they're being cited more often, and I know they're being read more often. And the open journals publish more articles because they're not constrained by the physical publishers as much. So, and the other just thing I wanted to show you for your professional development, this is Athabasca University Press, and it's Canada's first open press, and that means that every book that we publish is free for downloading. It's better if you buy them in paper. Better for me or the authors, but they're totally free if you just want to read them. And if you come over here to the books, to the series, one of the series is called Issues in Distance Education, and you can see we have now, I think there's 7 or 8, but there's at least 2 more books that are in process. This one is How to Teach Science at a Distance. This one, if anybody is an instructional designer, it's all about, it's cases of an instructional designer who's working with 8 different faculty members and helping them to put their course online. This one's Newer Emerging Technologies. This is sort of talking about some of the pioneers of distance education. Mobile learning. This one isn't out yet, but it was one that Olaf Zwackler-Richter and I produced. It'll be out this fall. But what we did is we took Olaf did a survey of what are the most important educational research topics in all of the journals that were around. And we found there was 15 topics, from attrition to student dropout to attrition to, what are some of the other ones? Social networking, a whole bunch of the main topics. And we asked the most famous person in the world we could think of to write a chapter about what that topic was all about. And most of the most famous people said yes. Some of them didn't, and we had to ask the second most famous people. But in any case, I think you'll enjoy that. And then there's a new one just out last month, Teaching and Blended Learning and that's by Randy Garrison, who you might have heard of, and Marty. Okay, and then of course I hope that you read blogs and follow Twitter feeds from people who you think are important. And I guess the other thing that I think we need to help our students do is to get them to start subscribing to these journals and to start teaching themselves how to learn, because they're not going to have your presence forever, and so we have to help them to become lifelong learners. And then just how does this community of inquiry, what happens in a Web 2.0 environment, and when can you have too much social presence? And I think that can happen, that there's so much, people are overwhelmed with the kind of you know, you get students talking, and part of our role is to hone down and to make our courses manageable as well. Okay, the next and final thing that I think really challenges us is how do you do learner assessment, because that's what students care the most about. And we heard a talk yesterday at the eLearn Center from Denise Whitelaw, and she talked about all the different ways that assessment is improving. And I'm just going to show you just a minute of this one. This is a YouTube video on authentic assessment.
For a number of years now, there has been a growing concern that the assessment practices used in schools are failing to accurately measure student success. I'm Dr. Betty Wiggins, and tonight I will be speaking with Kate Dykstra, a Masters of Education candidate at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. Kate will be discussing the topic of authentic assessment with us, and she will also share some of the unique benefits this practice holds in the field of special education. Kate, welcome to Education Today, and thank you for coming to speak to us about authentic assessment.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Wiggins. I am quite excited to share my learning with you and to be able to discuss the benefits of authentic assessment with your audience.
So, Kate, Okay,
I'm mostly showing you for the tool. That's Go Animate, and wouldn't that be a nice thing to get your students to create a little video, and it's not that hard to do. And obviously, and I don't know whether it'd be interesting whether you can type in Catalan or whether that robot voice speaks more languages. I really don't know, but or they could do it in English, I guess. But I think and you, of course, you get, there's a character builder, you know, where it's nice to have a picture of yourself there, and then you say that put the eyes bigger until you can get something that looks roughly like you look, and lots of fun. And then you just type in text for the different voices, and you can put in when this went, and then they do the voice talking like that as well. So just a fun little tool. One of the things that, do you use e-portfolios with your students currently? Yes, no? Oh, okay. Well, then I won't have to talk too much about it, but just to say that we only started using them about 2 or 3 years ago. And we had in our master's degree, in order to finish, after you'd done all of your 12 courses, we used to have the students do 2 more essays. We called it a candidate or a comprehensive exam. And it was so silly because they'd been writing essays for 12 courses, and then we made them write 2 more essays. And it wasn't working for them, and it wasn't working for us when we got them to talk to us, and we had a private session with them. It was one of the ways, because we never saw our students face to face, we really were sure that the student who we'd been marking for 3 years was really that student and not their mother or something who was actually writing the essays. So it served that purpose, but now we switched it over to ePortfolio. And we use a tool called Mahara as the default, but we're really finding that there are so many different tools that students can use to create their e-portfolios that we don't say you must use Mahara. We say you must create an e-portfolio, and you can create it any way you want. And some of them are pretty texty, and you can see along the top, these are the competencies that we expect them to develop during our program, and then they have to under each one of these instructional design, he'll show what he did, what the artifact was, and what's his reflection on building that artifact and on that course. And so it serves our purposes very well because it gives us really good feedback on the parts of the courses that are working and the parts that students are not getting much out of. And you can use, and some of them have you know, fancier, oh, I guess it opened a different, you know, people can do, they can add different video or audio, different look and feel to it. And this one, I think she's got a video here of herself, yeah.
Hi, welcome to my portfolio. I'm Penny. I suppose you might be wondering why you're looking at a kitchen table. Well, I wanted to share with you where all the learning took place.
I can't even see her.
That's it. That was my office for the last 2 years.
I guess she's the camera person
now
too.
let me tell you, it wasn't near.
Anyways, it was a really step forward for us to make e-portfolios compulsory. The next one I want to just show you a quick little video is, you know, we've known for a long time that peer assessment is good because it forces the students, it gives them a chance to see other people's work and to give feedback. But there's always a problem in getting the students to exchange the papers, and it seems like, and if you had 50 students, it could be quite a challenge to actually make it work technically. I know that some of the learning management system, Moodle now has a e-portfolio system kind of built into it, not an e-portfolio, a peer assessment. But this is an interesting idea what these guys are doing here. I don't know why it hasn't started. Yeah. And what this guy is doing, well, I'll let him explain it to you from the University of Toronto.
From the moment we started using peer assessment in our introductory psychology class, we've also been conducting research to ensure really that we're reaching the goals that we hope we're reaching. And I'd like to give you a couple of examples of findings we've had in terms of peer assessment. So in one case, for example, students are asked first to submit a composition that reflects their critical thinking about some issue. And so it's a short composition. They submit it, but as they do so, they're also asked to judge the quality of their own work. Give themselves a mark out of 10.
So first they're self-assessing.
And by the way, they always tend to give themselves a better mark than they ultimately receive by about 1.5 at that point out of 10. They then go into a second phase where they're shown some exemplars of their peers' works, anonymously presented, and their task there is to decide which is better than which and why, and they have to put all that into words. So they have this very rich learning experience. At the end of that, we show them their own piece again, the same piece they submitted earlier, and ask them again. We tell them, you may remember what mark you gave, but disregard that, look at it with fresh eyes now. What mark do you think it deserves now? And what we find.
So what they did is they didn't have to exchange student papers. The person wrote their own paper, gave it a mark, and then they saw some exemplars, some good papers and some bad papers. So they were just, they didn't have to actually mark somebody else's paper, but they saw other papers with the marks on. Then they had to remark their own paper, and they were much better able to assess their paper by just having seen what a good paper was compared to other papers. So much easier than switching papers around and doing a standard peer assessment. And this is another tool that I've basically given up on when I mark essays and papers, term papers and assignments. I'm not a very fast typist, and so what I do is I put it in, not Adobe Connect, Adobe Acrobat, that's a typo there. And I make them into a PDF, and then if they hand them in Word, I save it as a PDF, and then I mark it using voice. So I just use a microphone, either a headset or one on my machine, and every time I come along, I say a few words or whatever, and it records it, and you can see that I've put 4 little comments in this paper. And so the student comes along, they click on it, and they can hear my voice. And why I really like this is because it saves me time, and I can do much. And I look, and there's a study here by Phil Ice, and he counted the number of words that people talk compared to the number they type. And most people talk way more than they type when they do assignments like that. And so it's efficient. And then he also asked them what's the teaching presence? And the students are, and I've used this now for 3 years, and every time the students say, oh, it's so nice, I really like that, because they can repeat it, and they say, it's just like I'm sitting across the table with them. And what I find too is that if I'm typing something like, I might like sometimes I say, let me read this sentence again to you, and are you saying that? And then, and they can hear me struggling, trying to understand what they're saying. So I would never write that in a text, but they can hear it from me. And then I also, sometimes, like if I say that there's, you should go and read this article or something, if I was typing it, I'd feel like I had to have the year right and put it in APA, but I can just say, well, do a Google search on Johnson or something, and it'll come up. And so it makes it a lot more casual and better for me. Okay, just to end, two quick things is your own net presence. And I think it's critically important, and you can test yourself anytime you want. Just do a Google search on your name and see what comes up, and what is the world see about you from your net presence. And this is an article, and it talks about the kinds of different things that happen, extent to which you engage in conversation, extent to which the groups you're involved in is visible, the reputation you have, the relevance and appeal of your work to others, the presence, and all of those establish a net identity for you. And this is another article from last year, and I quite liked it because it says, okay, if you're an academic, what's your academic persona? What do people see on the net? And over here on the far left, I guess I can't, oh yeah, is the formal self. And this is what your institution says about you. This will be, if you go to the eLearn Center or you're a fellow of the eLearn Center, it'll have a page, and it'll have a picture, and it'll probably have a bunch of out-of-date stuff that happened 2 years ago, the last time you managed to update it. And for many of us, that's where our net presence ends. It's a broadcast style, it's fixed, it's focused on our achievement and our expertise, and it's framed through the institution. But you're more than your institution. You've got a lot of different things in your life. And a lot of times those are interesting to share. Of course, you don't want to share everything about your personal life, but you want to have a balanced net presence. And so then the next one is the network self. And this is what you get from joining things like academia, LinkedIn, Facebook, I guess, where you're professional, the extra institutional thing, multi-platform, and it's starting to be more narrow cast to different audiences, and you're in control of it, and you build it yourself, more or less. And then there's the people who start bringing in their personal life, what they're interested in, their sports life, their kids, their music interests, that sort of thing. And again, on Facebook is probably the most typical way people do it. And then finally, your teaching self, where you're actually showing or demonstrating or giving evidence of at least the courses you've taught, the interests you have, how you teach, all those sorts of things, because we're professional teachers. And the worst thing to have is the uncontained self, is where your net presence is defined by somebody else. And if, at least in North America, students use Rate My Professor, and so you can punch your own name, and the students score you on how cool you are and how fair you are, and all of these things are controlled by other people, and you shouldn't have your net presence being defined by other people. You should be in control of your net presence. And so, there's these reputation companies. If you're running a company and all of a sudden the web gets full of bad things about your company, and the manager comes in and says, you got to get rid of all of this bad stuff about me. And they say, well, you can't do that. But the solution is put lots of good stuff about you onto the net, so that at least when people do Google searches, they're going to get a balanced interpretation. And I think that's the same. We got to avoid the uncontainable self. And this is a profile from academia.edu, but there's ResearchGate. There's a whole bunch of these kind of competitive systems. See, I think we're seeing the end of the Facebook hegemony on this. We're starting to see different formats, different boutique areas of networking happen. But this is showing how many people are reading the documents, and academia.edu is really good because you know how they say you're supposed to put your journal articles or your accomplishments, but if you do it for this one, for that one, you're spending all your time uploading references, and it's hard and boring, and nobody likes to do that. But academia, one day I just logged in there, and they said, oh, we found 82 articles that have your name on them, and I just clicked off the ones that were actually me. The other Andersons who weren't me, I just didn't put, and bang, they were all in. So it's a wonderful service. And then you can see how many people are reading them. It's either very good for your ego or it's a little depressing, but anyways, you can see your net presence right there. Okay, just going to end by talking about my own research these days is about social networking in a boutique kind of network. We call it the Athabasca Landing. That was the name of the town of Athabasca. It's on the Athabasca River, and when they were going up, the fur trader, or the gold miners were going into the far north, the boats landed at a port where they stopped, and it was called Athabasca Landing. So now we have a virtual landing. And it's all about giving our students and our teachers an environment where they build things they want. They don't ask anybody. Anybody can start a group. Anybody can have a profile or a picture or a place. And I know you have one at UOC, but I think maybe it's just for faculty, and I was looking at it the other day. It's hardly used. It's really hard to get critical mass, to get enough people who are really involved with it and using it. But the way we've done it at Athabasca is this system is very tight on permissions, so that every single thing that you add, and every picture I add, I get to decide who gets to see it. And it might be just 2 or 3 friends, it might be just my teacher, it might be just colleagues in my department, it might be people in this class or that class or all of my students, or it might be Google search engines and everyone in the whole world. And so some blog posts I share widely, and some blogs I just share with a certain group. And so it's closed that way, and it gives people security. They're not posting onto the open net unless they want to. And sometimes students want to, and sometimes they don't want to. So we call it a walled garden. It's protected, but there's windows, and you can let other people see what's happening if you choose to. So it's a private space, and it's persistent. Even after you're an alumni, you've finished with Athabasca, you can always come back to the landing and add new things to it if you wish to. And it has all of the blogs and photos and Twitter and calendars and polls and all of the things that you would expect. Well, it's based on the ELG platform, elgg.org, if anybody's interested. So there's just the tool set that are there. We've just added pin boards, which are like Pinterest, sort of like that Learnist kind of thing we just built out a little while ago. And you can see, you can reply, you can postmark it, you can vote that this is a good comment or a bad comment, all that sort of stuff. And there's the permissions coming down. I can share it with whomever I want. The default sharing is just people within our broad Athabasca community. And each of my courses, I have a Moodle site where most of the content resides, but I bring the discussion and the student contribution into this platform. And it's a little confusing. Sometimes students don't know which platform to publish in. But they generally, they like to stay in the comfort of Moodle, but after I've dragged them into this environment, they usually say at the end that, oh, they see how it's different. And so, to conclude, the community of inquiry model is, I think it's a good one. It's good for research, but it's also good because it's simple and easy. You can think about how much teaching presence you've got in your course, how much social presence you've got, and how much cognitive presence. And then if you get into the literature, it'll tell you ways to measure them. But it's a nice thing to think about of if my course isn't working very well, it's probably one of those 3 things is not working. And is it useful? And with that, there's my blog address and my email. And I don't know, I guess I've got exactly 11 o'clock, but if there's any time for comments or questions, I know I'm holding you up from coffee, so, but if there's a comment or a question, I'd be more than interested.